Good evening, fam. You're tuned into Step in the Arena, a brand new podcast on the Cruise Control Podcast Network. I'm Bobby C, joined by Edgar Burgos. Ed, how you doing, my man?
My man, Bobby C, the voice of New York, the Marv Albert of street
Of
ball.
the streets, yeah.
Happy
I
to
don't
be
know
here.
if the kids today even know who Marv Abbott is, man.
How you been? How you been doing?
I'm doing okay.
Happy New Year.
Surviving here at home and excited to do this brand new podcast with you. And honestly, Ed, I really think that the world might be coming to an end because the New York Mets are making moves and the Knicks are fifth in the East.
Let me tell you something. Me and super producer Randy Cruz have been talking, and we fight all the time. But I did say the hiring of Tom Thibodeau will make a difference. I was happy when they hired Leon Rose last year. I've told my friends that. I was happy when he brought on Wes. And I said those two, as long as they're able to do their job, because there's higher ups sometimes that kind of mess things up. We ain't going to say his name, but if they're able to do their job, they're going to be fine.
Absolutely, Ed. I mean, the Knicks are 5-3. They've won 3 straight, 5 in their last 6 games. I know the fans at home got to be super excited about the play of Austin Rivers. And I think only more good things to come for the Knicks because Obi Toppin is of course, out right now and should be back soon. I think he'll be a nice player for them. Knicks making moves today, too, Ed, with the re-signing of Taj Gibson. So we'll see if he gets reunited with a coach that he's very familiar with. I think he'll be a good addition, a veteran presence for this team.
No, Taj is a great pickup. I know they're releasing Omari Spellman, but Taj is a vet. He's a great locker room guy. He's perfect. Obviously, he's been with TIBBS for a very long time. Chicago and Minnesota, and now they're reuniting in New York. So, I'm happy that that Taj is back in the league, and I think this is only going to make the Knicks a little bit better.
Ed, you got to love, too. I mean, you bring up Rivers. Watching that game the other night, they're down 18 in the first half. Of course, he, finishes with 23 points for the night, 14 consecutive points in the fourth quarter. And earlier in the day, I think a lot of the fans at home had to be laughing about his Instagram post with his girlfriend, pretty upset about him working out on his off days. But he's been putting in the work. And right now, Austin Rivers and the Knicks have really been like a perfect pair so far since him coming back from being out.
Yeah, so it's crazy with Austin. Like the credit goes to obviously, his dad played with the Knicks. Actually went to the finals. He didn't go to the finals, but he was on that '93 team, and then he had the ACL injury. But his dad telling him that the Knicks is a good place to play, and for the Knicks, only signing him for a 3-year, $10 million deal. I mean, the guy's playing well above his pay rate.
Well, I mean, Ed, he's played on 5 teams. He came out in the press conference and he said that, this is not a bad team. He's played on some bad NBA teams. He said this is not one of them. So I'm sure Knicks fans got to be excited about just his loyalty so far to the franchise and making that move to decide to come here, because that's kind of been the problem for the Knicks in the last several years. I mean, trying to lure the star free agents, and even TIBBS kind of saying that the Knicks are still looking for probably that guy. They've got a nice young core that they're putting together right now. And Rivers, of course, I think is a nice veteran presence as well. We'll see if Gibson's got anything left. But again, Rivers, to me, in these last 3 games, he has delivered time in and time out, been very clutch in these last 3 games for the Knicks.
No, Rivers, great pickup. Quigley has stepped up as a rookie.
Quivers, man, Quivers.
Quiver. He doesn't like that name. Austin Rivers doesn't like that name, so I'm not going to call it Quivers because he doesn't like it. But Rivers stepping up. But Julius Randle,
absolutely, man,
all-star right now. He's playing like an all-star. He's playing the best he has in his whole career. I don't know who you give credit to for that.
Well, I think a lot of it is probably the mindset right now in terms of kind of working hard on the defensive end and rebounding the basketball. I mean, coaches kind of talked about how important it is to play, those aspects of the game, and it tends to lend itself to the offensive end of the floor. And, and again, right now, Randall, the past 4 games with 25 points, 10 rebounds, most by a Knicks player, and the team's, in terms of averages, first 8 games since our friend, Hall of Famer Patrick Ewing. I think that's pretty good company for Julius Randle.
No, major company. I just hope he continues to play the same way, the rest of the season. And I'm definitely curious to see how Obi Toppin's going to play. When he does come back, he was, he had a couple of games in before he injured himself. So, we want to see his progress. Obviously, with the Knicks winning, there's not too much talk about, Obi being out, but eventually you're going to want to hear, you're going to want to see him play.
Well, we got a great show for our fans tonight. For our first show, we'll talk to Hoops Hype writer MikeAScotto, and we've also got Anthony Donahue joining us later in the evening from the 33rd and 7th podcast, and of course from the Orange and Blue crew. And we've got Mike on the line with us now. Mike, how's it going?
What's up, fellas? Great to be on with you. How are you both?
My favorite Scotto. I love this guy. Let me tell you something. I freaking met MikeAScotto. It has to be more than 10 years ago. Right?
Yeah,
Scott was a young guy who wanted to be a writer, and I think we were introduced by Anthony, right?
Anthony Donahue. And the funny thing was at that time, the first time I started coming in there, I think I was still a teenager. I probably just was getting out of college at that point at Hofstra. And I remember the first time I went in, they said, if you had any trouble getting in at the door, picking up your credential, just tell him Frank Isolla's nephew. They'll let you right in.
Yeah, so it's funny because right before that, me and Scotto, I remember him. We sat down. He told me he wanted to be a writer, and that was his dream. And we became cool after that. I was like, "Yo, I'll get you in the locker room. I can hook you up a couple of times." And next thing I know, this guy's been writing all over the place.
It's been 10. This is my 10th season now, brother. It's been new, right?
Yeah, I'm proud of you, man. So he wrote for the Knicks, wrote for the Nets, and now he's at Hoops Hype.
Hey, man, just trying to make it every day, one day at a time. That's all. But definitely been a fun ride. And, I still got the old credentials from back when, the Heart of God. I remember those. I still got them.
Never forget.
Never forget. You never forget where you started. Never. What's up, Bobby? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. We opened up the show, Mike, talking a lot of Knicks basketball. We were hoping to get a chance to chat a little bit about the Brooklyn Nets with you. I mean, the final score tonight, too, just going final. So they do advance to be 5-4, 122-109, the final over the Sixers. That's a big win for the Nets, considering all the injuries tonight and the fact that the Sixers came into the game tops in the East at 7-1.
Yeah, no Kyrie, no KD. Speaks to the core, the rest of the guys that they do have. Karis LeVert shown in the bubble what the guy can do when he has the ball in his hands. So it's a great sign for him trying to get out of a little bit of an early season slump. And Jarrett Allen has looked great. I remember when Ed Davis was with the Nets, he always said that he thought Jarrett Allen was going to be $100 million man. Well, it's coming up on contract time now, and they didn't get an extension done. So, it's kind of like Jerry Maguire. Show me the money, baby.
Absolutely. I mean, he actually had, I think it was 10 rebounds in the first 12 minutes of the game tonight in the first half. So definitely cleaning up on the boards. And, Nets getting some good performances from some of their other role players, too. Joe Harris finding a shooting groove early in the first half. And I think Jeff Green, too, deserves a little bit of a nod tonight as well.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff's a versatile guy. In today's NBA, this guy could play the five, like Edgar was saying back in the day when I started, Jeff Green at the five, this guy would have got killed. But it's a new era, new small ball era in the league, and he's proven to be a versatile guy. And you mentioned Joe Harris. Sure, he looks like the guy in Dodgeball, the movie right now with the headband and the long hair, but he's always been an incredible shooter. And you talk about people's journeys. Joe and Spencer Dinwiddie, the way these guys resurrected their career, they were both nearly out of the league by the time they joined the Nets. And, especially Joe, I remember coming off the injuries in Cleveland and he got cut in Orlando. It just to really find a home here and then get the bag, this offseason, I was thrilled for him. He's a great guy, just as great of a guy as he is a shooter in this league. And, he's going to be pivotal for them and their success this year.
What do you think about the two things, the job that Sean Marks has done since he's taken over, as the general manager, president, the last, for the past few seasons, and the job that Steve Nash has done 9 games in?
When I look at Sean Marks' tenure, I think obviously, look, anytime you get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, that's a home run. It's like a grand slam for them. I don't think many people would have thought that for the Nets when he first took over the job. In the beginning, when he sent out a lot of those offer sheets to Alan Crabb, Tyler Johnson, he ended up getting 2 of them eventually. Tyler on a minimum later on, but it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if those offer sheets weren't matched. But he's done a really great job overall. And then you look at you mentioned Steve Nash. Steve, I think, is feeling his way out right now, but having Mike D'Antoni on the bench, one of the most brilliant offensive minds there, is going to help. Jock Vaughn had a great rapport with Kyrie Irving and Karis LeVert from last year. You'd always see them working together on the court. I think that helps. He's got a lot of experienced guys. Ime Udoka on that staff, and those guys, Durant and Kyrie, they've both been to the highest level. They know what it takes to win. So I think that's going to help them tremendously, and I'm excited to see what happens for them. Certainly.
Go ahead, Bobby.
No, I was just going to say, Mike. Obviously tonight Kyrie out for personal reasons, and Kevin Durant with the quarantine, he'll be coming back from that soon. And you mentioned Spencer Dinwiddie, how big of a loss that is for the Nets this season. Probably will be out the season-ending injury, but could be back maybe late in the year, potentially for the playoffs. But do you think this is going to be something that the Nets might have to contend with throughout the season? I know this is not an injury for Durant. And again, these, maybe off the court issues might not be something that affects the physical health of Kyrie. But could this be something that lingers for the Nets?
What I think for everybody in the league, aside from injuries, you're talking about the whole COVID protocols, and it just seems like when one guy on the team gets it, it's going to have a trickle-down effect because somebody's going to come into contact with the guy. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges for the league. Yeah, sure, we've seen some injuries, with the different schedules so far for the season, but I think everybody's going to get it. When I look at the Nets in particular, losing Spencer Hurts, it was interesting, though, because when he was in the starting lineup, I didn't know if it necessarily clicked in terms of his personal numbers, but I felt like him being another ball handler helped. So that's going to be a different element that they have to account for. But overall, the biggest thing, in speaking to some executives when he went down, was at the end of the day, if Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are healthy, doesn't matter. You can replace. It's hard to replace a Spencer Dinwiddie, who was a guy that was, when he started, he was a borderline all-star last year to some people. So it is hard to replace him. But ultimately, if you've got your 2 core franchise pillars in Durant and Irving on the court, you've got a great shot to win any single night. Those guys, they, in my opinion, they're easily top 10 in the MVP conversation early to start the season with the stats that they've put up so far. Now, I know Durant's going to miss some time, but just their level of play has been sensational, especially Kevin, who has missed so much time. It's like the guy never missed a beat, and he hasn't picked up a basketball in like a year and a half. It's phenomenal.
So I actually got a comment too in the chat asking about how many games that you would expect both KD and Kyrie to play together.
Together, 72. Let's go with somewhere between 55 to 60.
Okay, together, and then I guess for the most part, you would think that they're going to be on the floor then throughout the season.
Yeah, and look, Durant's obviously with the COVID protocol stuff, it's a little tough right now, but ideally, like they both want to play. Now, granted, I know Kyrie missed the game against the Sixers for personal reasons, but they both know what's at stake this season and trying to get this team to the championship. It's their goal, so I do expect them to be out there as much as possible. They got to develop that chemistry. It doesn't just happen overnight. And I know sometimes they miss some of the back-to-backs, but I think eventually they're going to try to get them in there. You see the same thing with Philly with Joel Embiid. At some point, your stars have to play, and even now with Kawhi Leonard with the Los Angeles Clippers.
I was going to say one of the guys you really haven't mentioned yet is the rise of Karis LeVert. And are you happy that the Nets stayed with Karis LeVert and not use him as trade bait? And like they were talking about that whole James Harden thing earlier, or do you think they're going to maybe revisit that later on down the season?
I'll say this: the second Spencer Dinwiddie went down, I thought that really hurt any chances of them getting Harden. And if you talk to anybody around the league, that package wasn't going to be necessarily enough. It's a lot different than if Philadelphia offered Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is a proven young, all-star caliber guy and a unique player. While a lot of people around the league like Caris LeVert, I do think some people are higher on him than others. And in Houston, I didn't necessarily get the sense that was going to be the guy that moved the needle. And that's why you would see reports out there about them trying to get a third team to help make it happen if they were going to get James Harden. In terms of the Nets, look, there's two thought processes. One, I would say that I think having LeVert off the bench in that Manu Ginobili role that Steve Nash talks about, and having, previously when they thought they were going to have Dinwiddie and Jarrett Allen, it's huge for them. If you were getting Harden, Kyrie, and Durant, yeah, that's an amazing trio. But then you're going to need to essentially bet on the buyout market to try and fill out those guys, the rest of that roster by the end of the season to make a run at a title. With Jarrett Allen, the way he's played right now, he's their starter right now. You can't overlook that. And this guy's motivated more than ever before to get a bag this summer when it comes to his money. So I expect him to have the best year of his career. And Caris is going to find his way too. You need him now just as much as any time, because when you had Dinwiddie, you had that insurance policy if Kyrie went out. Now you've got Caris who can play the one. He can play point guard and make guys better. He thrives with high pick and rolls with Jarrett Allen and DeAndre Jordan. So, yeah, sure, you'd love to get James Harden, but ultimately, I think they got to give it a chance to see what can happen. And already you're already not fully sure what it would have been, because Spencer Dinwiddie could potentially miss the season. We don't know that for sure, but you would expect it's going to be tough for him to get back at this point, given his injury with the ACL.
Mike, are you more surprised that the Nets decided to debut a retro court that pays respect to the New Jersey Nets, or the fact that outside the Barclays Center tonight you had demonstrations over what went on yesterday at the Capitol, which, of course, is pretty shocking news around America? I mean, I guess we're picking up on Bizarro World from 2020, just a few days into 2021.
Oh, yeah, but at the same time, Barclays Center has become a landmark in a sense for protesting. We've seen it all throughout 2020. It didn't surprise me at all, to see them out there. I'm sorry, I forgot the first part of that question too.
We're just joking around, of course, about the retro court night. It ended up actually playing, I guess, well into the hands for the Nets because of the victory tonight, but paying homage to Derek Coleman and those early 90s New Jersey Nets teams at the Meadowlands. I like those jerseys. It was like going to the Italian ISIS place and getting a rainbow cone or something with the red, white, and blue. I like those jerseys. They're pretty cool. For the Nets, they've always had the black and the white and the gray, and it's okay. But, when the Nets had the Kid, RJ, Richard Jefferson teams, and they had the red jerseys, I thought those were cool. Something different, something that pops. And I like these jerseys too, with these kind of glacier kind of blue and the red, white, and blue. I like it. Different change of pace, and obviously throw some homage to Derek Coleman, Drazen Petrovic, and Kenny Anderson those days.
I want to ask you a question as a writer for Hoop Type and somebody who usually goes into arena as Bob did during the season. How difficult is it now for you to do your job? Now that you can't go to the arenas and you have to pretty much pay attention to post-game stuff via Zoom.
I miss it a lot for a lot of reasons. Number one, I can't speak for every writer, but my usual routine was I would try to get there as early onto the court as possible. And that was just a great time to speak with executives, coaches, players, kind of the calm before the storm before a game is the best time to talk with some guys sometimes. And whether you're meeting an exec or a coach for the first time, you can introduce yourself. And I always just found it invaluable. And a lot of times, you would have some sit-down conversations with people, and, whether you were working on trying to gather intel for reporting or things like that, it was the best thing. I've always found face-to-face conversations to be the best way to build any relationship or friendship, try to get an interview down the road, anything. You miss being in the locker room with the players because you can't observe things with your own eyes. And sometimes, those would be the best conversations after a win or something. Sometimes like there would be a large scrum of reporters going into one place, and I would I'd slowly like slip out of the back, and then I'd go over to somebody else and pull them one-on-one and have a chat. I miss those a lot. And I miss the people. Like, I don't think a lot of people understand this, but like the security people, whether it's at MSG and Barclays and those people, they always just were a pleasure to talk to. And I miss seeing those people just in general. It's just good to see, especially now, given, the way the pandemic is. You just miss those interactions if you're a social person like myself. And, I've met a lot of good people along the way in both those arenas, going back and forth that, I still keep in touch with on my cell, but, it's not the same. And look at all the highlights and great games we've seen so far. Like the other night, Austin Rivers is going off for the Knicks with 14 points in the fourth quarter. And it's just so surreal because you think of the Garden or like Kyrie and Durant going off in Barclays, and they should be rocking. I think it's such a shame that, we're in this point in the world right now where fans can't be there and enjoy it because, or even like when guys are coming back to cities for the first time, like when, Steven Adams went back to OKC and they do like the piping in of the crowd noise. It's almost like the Twilight Zone. It's so surreal. I definitely miss it a lot, Edgar. No doubt about it. Does it make it difficult to do my job? Yeah, in some ways it does because, you're more dependent on, instead of maybe just pulling a guy one-on-one, sometimes you got to work with other people to try to get the guy on the phone or this or that. And it's like, sometimes before a game, you just walk up to a guy and you catch him and it works. And it's just simple and easier. So I could see that. I hope that going forward for journalists and media coverage that we are able to get back in and get our normal access again, because I think it's going to matter for us, but just as importantly, the access for the fans who, want to read this stuff, know about sometimes whether there was maybe a locker room blowout or something after the game, a blow up. You're able to pull guys aside and really dig in on that stuff. And I think the fans enjoy it just as much as we do.
Mike, the Knicks have been killing it since Soul came out. I'm not sure if that has anything to do with their recent streak here, but we have another question in the queue asking about whether or not you think the Knicks are going to make the playoffs this year.
I didn't think so coming in. But hey, TIBBS has – I'll say this. If the Knicks, by the end of the season, were in the play-in tournament or gave themselves a chance for that, I think that's a success for them from what I thought coming into the season. Now, with that said, for me, the biggest things that matter to me are the development of Mitchell Robinson, Obi Toppin, Emmanuel Quickly, and, see what you could do with Julius Randle. The way he's going off right now, I almost wondered in the back of my mind, it reminded me a little bit of like Zach Randolph years ago when he was playing so well and then they moved him and got some assets for him. If you don't view him as part of the long-term future, maybe you try to do that and excel the rebuild. But I love what I'm seeing from them right now. Tom Thibodeau has always had a knack for getting the most out of his players, whether it was in Chicago, Minnesota. People forget Minnesota didn't make the playoffs for over a decade. And then he came in when Jimmy Butler and he got them there. It took Towns and Wiggins there. I've been impressed thus far with what I've seen from the young Knicks. But if you're asking me if I think they're going to make them at the end of the season, the playoffs, I'm still not sure on that yet. It's a great start and it's very encouraging. No doubt about it. But still a lot of season left.
Might be a little premature. I guess Knicks fans, getting pretty pumped that we're not even through 10 games. But, you got to admit that we haven't had a lot to really be that excited about, especially the last few seasons.
Oh, yeah. No, there's no doubt about it. I just think that I love how hard they're playing. Anytime you look at the Knicks, are you playing hard? And that's something that Knick fans thrive on. They love seeing guys go all out. I think they have a lot of those guys. And again, I really thought TIBBS was the best guy out there for if you wanted a coach to win right now. Now, granted, when you look at the Knicks on paper, maybe you thought, it could be more of a developmental team, and maybe someone like theoretically a Kenny Atkinson would have made sense. But that said, I mean, the guy always gets the most out of his talent, and they need to win games in a sense because they got to drive up the value for those guys. And like what the Nets did when they got the 6th seed, and they did it with D'Angelo and those guys, and then they were able to get Durant and Irving. It's all about showing that you have a sustainable foundation to whether it's free agents down the line or guys that maybe want to get traded out of a place and would want to go to your organization. It's all about showing that you have a foundation. And thus far, through the first 10 games or so, the New York Knicks have shown that they look like they're on the right track to doing that.
Can you talk about the importance of the staff that the Knicks hired besides Thibodeau and the guys he brought in, the assistant coaches, the Johnny Bryants, and guys like, and their development team, and seeing the development of, RJ Barrett and, and Quigley now, who he was projected to be a second round pick, but the Knicks surprised everybody picking him in the first round.
When you look at guys like you mentioned, Brian as a coach, coming from a stable organization that's been to the playoffs multiple times, Utah, you look at guys that are winning guys. Coach Payne coming from Kentucky, sustainable program, obviously worked with Julius Randle before, Kevin Knox. If anybody's going to try to get the most out of them, it's him. So I think that all, their hires have been fine. It's all about, you look at all the guys they brought in, and it's just about sustainability. Even if you look at the front office, Brock Aller, Frank Zan, and those guys, they've been around. They've been around teams that have won. You think about Frank, he was with Philly when they had Allen Iverson, and then, those Nets teams as well that made it to the playoffs. And then, Brock, obviously, with Cleveland. These are guys that have won before, and they know what it takes. So I thought if you combined all of that together, it would click. And I think one of the things you saw, because you touched on Emmanuel quickly and like where he could have been drafted. When they were making the moves for Ed Davis and getting those second round picks, those are the type of moves you want to see. Use the cap space to get some future assets and picks, and then be able to maybe flip those down the line. The one thing about the draft, if you like a guy, I'm never one that's like, oh, well, the mock draft said XYZ, because you got guys that go top 10 sometimes and are busts because they're in the wrong situation. The draft is such a fluid thing. If you feel highly on a guy and you like his makeup and his ability, what's the difference if you take a guy that's in maybe a second round pick that you would think, maybe in the 30s, and he goes 25? It's not that big a difference, especially in these last few drafts. The margin between those guys is so small. It's different than taking a guy, let's say, that's projected for the 20th pick and you take him in the top 5. That's a little different. But once you get past, I would say, even the top 20 picks in a draft, those boards fluctuate so much from team to team around the league. And you got to go with your gut, and you got to trust your intel and, your scouts and those guys. And obviously, one of the guys they brought in, a guy like an Alex Klein, who has a lot of grassroots connections, which down the line, if the league goes to the high school route where those guys can come in, that's going to matter. All those relationships and that intel of knowing a guy's character, that's half the makeup of a player in the league. A lot of these guys have the talent. Do you have it up here? That's the difference.
Mike, we got another question coming in. Actually, this one coming from Joe Cruz. We'll give him a shout out too for his podcast, The Commissioner's Corner, also on the Cruise Control Podcast Network. How do you feel so far about the development of RJ Barrett in the second season of the NBA?
RJ's looked good so far. I mean, I think for RJ, one, he looks stronger. His physique looks better. I think for him, as long as he continues to develop his shot, work on that three-point shot and the free throws, it's going to come together for him. I remember watching him in high school, and I thought that he was ahead of the game in terms of his mental makeup. He looked like he could be kind of a point forward when he was playing in some of these high school all-star games. I think athletically in the league, it's kind of caught up to him in a sense where he's not going to dominate as much as he did in the high school and even at Duke when he was averaging over 20 plus. But I think for RJ Barrett, if this guy becomes an all-star maybe a couple of times, once, twice, or something like that, it'll be a success because I think he has that type of potential in his game. Obviously, there's a lot of X factors and variables that come together. But this season so far, I like what I've seen. I think he's shown an ability to get to the hole better and finish better. Just got to continue to work on his outside 3-point shot and at the foul line as well. But he's taking the right steps.
And improved, though, Mike. The shot has improved this year.
Yeah, no, I'm saying it has. I just think, to get to, from what I'm saying, to get to that all-star potential, still got a ways to go. But I do like what I've seen thus far in year two. There's no doubt about it.
I was going to say, my last question, it's so important with development with the Knicks because, my biggest beef with the Knicks has been, and obviously, I worked there for so long, when I worked there for 20 years, is that I'm going to ask you a question, and I know the answer already. Who was the last player drafted by the Knicks that the Knicks actually re-signed?
Charlie Ward.
That's in the 90s, which is crazy. All those first rounders, they traded in their first contract. That just tells you that the development's been bad, and that that's unacceptable, especially if you want to become a playoff team every season, and you want to develop a championship type team.
100%. And then I even when you mentioned that, I thought of even like Landry Fields and Iman Shumpert. They came in with such pop in the beginning, and then it just fizzled, and they ended up getting moved. And you would like to think that RJ, Mitch, Robinson are going to be guys that are part of that core. Different philosophy now, and we'll see if it happens. But I agree with you 100%. Their development over the years prior to now has not been where it needs to be at all. And I'm sure they recognize that, obviously, with the turnover in management and whatnot, and we'll see. But, as Bobby touched on, with the question from Joe Cruz, you see RJ's development get there so far in year two. Mitch has gotten look at the guy's shoulders, his physique, and, his ability to improve continuously as a shot blocker, just learning to stay out of foul trouble, learn the game more. You got to remember with a guy like that too, missing a year of college ball, that slows your development. So, I think they've got all the pieces. I'd like to see Obi Toppin more if he can stay healthy. I'm intrigued by him. Normally I would say when a forward comes into the league, kind of his size, and he's a little bit older for his class, I wonder about the long-term development. But we've seen in recent drafts, even a guy like Eric Paschall, that was a 4-year guy, proved to be a good player. I think that trend has shifted a little bit too, in terms of the stigma for guys like that stay in college ball to an upperclassman level. For years, scouts and execs would say then the more tape you get, the more you could scrutinize on a guy. But at the same time, you also know more what kind of a player you're getting the longer he's in college and whatnot. So, but also one last thing, you look at Karl Towns at Kentucky. Guy never really shot threes and comes into the NBA and he's lighting it up from downtown. Sometimes it's, to your point, Edgar, it's about unlocking that potential as a development staff and taking a guy to the next level. 100%.
Mike, before we let you go, we wanted to ask you what you're working on too for Hoops Hype and USA Today Sports.
Sure. So recently we just did a story on how players ask to get traded. So, some of the other things I'm working on are how executives and agents use smoke screens out there, whether it's for free agency, the draft, or trades, to, get their messages out there and maybe try to tip the scales on where a guy ends up getting traded. I've been fascinated by a lot of the responses, whether it's execs and agents, and how they kind of play off of each other sometimes, and that domino back and forth. So that's definitely one thing you could look forward to. And, it's kind of crazy too. I mean, obviously, Kobe Bryant's anniversary coming up in a year, we're working on some things for that as well. So, I mean, that's on a somber note. That's something you can look towards for some content on Hoops Hype and USA Today Sports for the upcoming month.
Well, you're doing a great job, and I appreciate you taking the time with us tonight. First episode here.
My pleasure, fellas. I'm glad I could be part of the inaugural.
My favorite Scotto, always will be.
It's either me or Rosanna on Fox 5, right? That's it.
I appreciate you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
My pleasure, fellas. Anytime. You have a great night.
All right, later.
Hey, that was great stuff, man. So great to catch up with MikeAScotto. I mean, again, as you mentioned, someone I would get a chance to speak with quite frequently at Nets and Knicks games, and excited to see what he's putting together for Hoops Hype.
Yeah, like I said, I remember Mike when he was a young pup, and to see him grow and writing for all these different platforms, I'm really proud of him because he followed his dream, and that's what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, he makes some great points too about how, obviously COVID-19, of course, has changed the landscape of sports probably forever. I am very curious to see what the media format will be moving forward, even once, I guess, the vaccines, quote unquote, kind of kick in, and whether or not we will go back to some similar formats. I mean, as you remember, I mean, you're in these locker rooms and the reporters are right on top of players changing, and definitely not a social distancing kind of environment. And these days, even today, as continuing to be a reporter in my profession, getting a chance to be on the Zoom press conference for the Mets announcement that they had acquired Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco, pretty big move for them. Of course, that was done, virtually, getting a chance to talk to the GM and the president. And I'm sure it's only a few days away before the Mets will actually introduce the players. And that, too, will be something that'll be virtual and remote. So kind of, I guess, the new world that we live in these days, even for sports reporters.
Yeah, I actually feel like when we do open up and get to any type of normal again, I definitely feel locker room access will not happen for a bunch of years. I feel like it'll be total press conferences where they'll get like three players a la the NBA Finals to talk to per game or something like that instead of the whole team. And I think that's how it's going to go from now on.
Press conference style. Yeah, I mean, that right now, that's how the Knicks and the Nets are doing things. Again, most of it is being done from afar. A lot of the professional teams, of course, are allowing kind of, minimal reporters to be allowed into the arena. But believe it or not, and I don't know if our fans at home would know this, even the reporters that have been allowed into the arena, they too have been on the Zoom. So I guess, their access to the arena to see the Knicks and Nets live is more to kind of be involved and being there for the live coverage, maybe do some stand-ups if they do TV or actual live radio hits from the arena, which of course that's different now too, because there's no background crowd noise. But all the reporters that are even in the arena, they too are getting on at these Zooms. So you see them on the MSG network, for the Knicks after the games, and the YES network for the Nets after the game. So, it's just an entirely different format for everyone.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like you said, I didn't really pay attention to the fans, like you said, going on press conferences after the games on Zoom. I didn't. Do the fans get to ask questions to the players, or they just watching?
No, they just watch it. I mean, I guess some places have done different things, where they've had, so like even, for example, today, the reporters were actually on that Zoom for the Mets press conference, but the fans were able to log into it live on Facebook, and then kind of be there for that. So, again, technology is incredible. I mean, the other night got a chance to cover the Heisman. That's something I cover every year here in New York. I mean, that's an event that goes down in Times Square. And, reporters love it, too, because they get a chance to do their stand-ups with the Heisman Trophy, get to be there around all these other great Heisman winners. And that, of course, was something that was done remote. And even talking to a lot of the players that were finalists for that, they were remote off-site somewhere. Obviously, two of the finalists were from Alabama, so they were kind of together where they were. But, just kind of trying to make adjustments. And I think MikeAScotto is in that same boat, but doing a great job with the content. I think one thing that we've learned from COVID-19 is that many of us can do our work from home, even if we're not, actually in person for things.
Look at us. We never thought we'd step into the arena together.
Of course, step in the arena from home. Stay home in the house in the arena. Well, we're having a good time here on our first show, again, on the Cruise Control Podcast Network. We wanted to bring in our second guest tonight, Anthony Donahue, who's, I think, Mr. Knicks. I think that's probably the best nickname for him. Anthony, how's it going?
What's going on, Bobby? What's up, Edgar? Mr. Knicks definitely does work.
My brother. I'm privileged, honored. This is my guy right here. I got quick story. I got to show a quick story. Anthony, I've known. Oh man, Anthony will probably remember the day and the time.
No, we officially met in the preseason of 2009. I knew about you for a while, and it was weird because around 2009, I already knew a lot of people at the Garden. I knew a lot of the team employees, security guards, you name it. The people that cleaned the bathroom, I knew everybody, but I didn't know Edgar personally. So over the years between like 05 and 09, people would say, "Oh, you know people at the Garden. Do you know Edgar Burgos?" And I'm like, "No, I never." People would ask me all the time if I knew Edgar. And then one day, Edgar, I'm during warm-ups, I'm actually right by Spike Lee. Edgar walks up to me, and he was like, "Who are you?" So I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "He's Edgar." I said, "I'm Anthony." And we've been great friends ever since.
You know, Ant, coming into tonight, I was thinking of a way to try to describe how well the Knicks have played through these first, 8 games of the season. And all I could think about is your social media post on Instagram. I was hoping you could maybe give us, after the Knicks victory, what it feels like.
I'll come for it right now, but, it's a good fist pump, just like after Allen did when he beat Miami in Game 5 of the 1999 first-round series. If you watch Knick games with me and you've seen some good Knick games with me over the years, which unfortunately there hasn't always been a lot, you've seen that fist pump. You've seen that fist pump in real time. And I hope we see that fist pump a lot more over the next few years with Tom Thibodeau and everybody else leading the squad the way we're playing. But it's only 8 games. Don't want to start planning the parade just yet, but you should enjoy it. I think one thing I've learned so much just from a life standpoint is, like I said, don't plan the parade. We're not quite there yet. Enjoy every second of it. Don't act like an ass, but enjoy every second of it because life is so precious. And just enjoy it. Enjoy Austin Rivers threes and Julius Randle's, looking like Kenny Anderson out there. Emmanuel quickly looking like Steve Urkel dropping buckets. You know what I'm saying? With the shorts up like Thibodeau, barking. Knicks fans, man, I said you guys, we've been through a lot the last 20 years. We've had our hearts broke so much. Just enjoy it. Don't worry about who's rooting for the team. Don't worry about your fake. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's been great to see how excited you are about the Knicks. I think you kind of speak for Knicks Nation in terms of these wins and how well they've played the last few games. And I know that you're kind of getting back into things right now. This is your second podcast of the day. Both Edgar and I wanted to send out our condolences, of course, for the passing of your sister. And I was hoping that you could share a little bit about what you've been able to do with the toy drive and also giving back to kids with cancer.
Yeah, thank you, of course, Bobby. Thank you, Edgar. She passed away at the age of 21. She was 21 for 2 weeks. I think it was very important for her to get to 21, and she did drink a beer in the hospital on her 21st birthday, which I posted on my Instagram and Twitter and everything. And she was diagnosed with a brain cancer back in July of 2010. And it was a really bad brain cancer. It was a brain cancer, a lot of kids or people die from, and she beat it. I mean, she was incredible. She did so much chemo. She had brain surgery. She did more chemo after that. We went to Boston for radiation treatment. I mean, G was so tough, man, where Edgar was there. G was doing radiation treatment in Boston. And just so happens, who did the Celtics play in the first round of the playoffs but the Knicks? And G was so tired doing radiation, man. And excuse me, she came to game 1 of those playoffs with me in Boston. And, February 2012, they said she was cancer-free. I mean, she fought like a freaking beast, man. Never complained. Did everything she had to do, every appointment, you name it. And then she was in remission for 7 years. There was a few scares here and there with, you find a spot here with an MRI. I mean, when you go through something like that, especially so young, if my sister sneezed the wrong way, I'm calling the doctor. Like, hey, G sneezed wrong. Oh, well, let's get her in for an MRI, And then everything was going really good. And then in October 2019, The Yankees were in the playoffs. We were playing on a Sunday night. I fell asleep early, and G woke me up at about 3:30 in the morning. But she walked to my bedroom, mind you. She walked to it. And she said, Aunt, I feel funny. Now, mind you, I'm in a deep sleep. I'm just like, okay, like, what do you want me? What do you mean you feel funny? And she's like, can we, like, I just feel weird. I'm like, all right, well, if you feel weird when we wake up, we'll go to the hospital, doctor, whatever. She's like, okay. And she walks back to her room. And then 30 minutes later, she wakes me up again. And she's like, I can't get out of bed. And that's when I jumped up and I said, try to get up. And she's like, I can't. I called 911 right away. Paramedics get there. And they're like, we think she's having a stroke. Does she do drugs? I'm like, no, but obviously the paramedics didn't know about her cancer history. Get her to the hospital. Long story short, I mean, she's in brain surgery by 8 in the morning. I mean, she had a massive stroke, and then for the next 10 days, we had no idea that there was cancer, although most of the doctors and professionals had an idea that there was probably more to this stroke. And then, we find out she has a rare form of cancer called glioblastoma. And they told us flat out, she had 9 months to live, and she lived, and we lived every day. And we fought it. We fought the disease because there's no giving up. Just like there's no giving up. And there was a point in December where when she was living in a rehab center in New Rochelle, she was doing chemo, radiation, and physical therapy at the same time. At the same time. She never complained. And one story I want to share, especially with, Knicks fans watching and basketball fans, it was a few days out. It was about a week after the stroke. And she said, don't worry. I'm going to walk in our favorite restaurant, which is Carlo's in Yonkers. She said, don't worry. I'm going to walk into Carlo's soon. And I'm going to walk at center court at the Garden. Well, about a month later, she was able to, we were living in the rehab center. She lived in rehab. And our first night, we were able to go out. We headed over to Tuckahoe Road, and we went to Carlo's. And with some help, she walked in. And then a few days later, on a Sunday afternoon, a Knicks-Celtic game, we went to the game. And, of course, the Knicks organization was absolutely wonderful, like they've always been over the last 10 years. And me, my friend Jason Negron, Edgar knows Jason, we wheeled her out to center. So we wheeled her to the three-point line. Mike Breen was there. Walt Frazier was there. I didn't get this on video because I was so nervous, man. But even though I knew she was so determined, and she got out of the wheelchair at the three-point line, and with her cane and me holding her arm, she walked to center court. She said she was going to do it, and she did. And we just lived every day. And I'm 99.9% sure she knew how bad it was. We chose not to talk about it. We chose to live and enjoy every second. And that's why I talk about the Knicks even being good. Just enjoy it. Enjoy life, because you don't know. And it's tough. Every second is tough. And today is actually my third Knicks interview today. And I haven't done one in a year. I've done 3 today now. And every one I've shed a tear on. And it's and that's okay. It's okay. And I do it for her. And I know that, especially with the Knicks playing well, if she knew that I wasn't on my grind, maybe I'm not doing as much as I've usually done in the past, but if she knew I wasn't on my grind, she'd be very upset. She'd be very upset. So it's important for me to start coming on these shows, talking about the Knicks and, sharing our story. And she was so tough, man. I know she made a lot of the 90s Knicks proud. Those guys are very heavy, especially Allen Houston. Allen Houston came to the hospital. There was many nights where, I was on the phone with Allen praying. There was nights where I've never shared this publicly, but where Allen took me into back rooms in the Garden, and we held hands and we prayed. And Allen prayed, and she fought, man. And on Thursday, June 18th, they brought me into a room and they said, she probably has about a week to go. And these are the best doctors in the world. They're Presbyterian Children's Hospital, And G ended up living 2.5 more months, and that's fight. That's fight. That's fight, man. She wasn't ready. And, she lived a very short life, but she lived a very full life. I think we can all learn from G, man. We all go through stuff. And this kid never complained. I mean, she never complained. Like I said, in December, doing chemo, radiation, and physical therapy at the same time. And it was, what's for dinner? What's for dinner? What can you get me a bagel for breakfast? And I think we all should live like that more, including myself. We all gotta live like that.
Anthony, we definitely appreciate you sharing that.
No, thank you for letting me share it.
The importance of like what nobody talks about is me and you, we always battle about the Knicks and when they're good and bad and stuff like
that. Of course.
Like,
tell me to always calm down just a little bit.
I'm talking about like Knicks behind the scenes and what they did for you and your family and as the Knick organization.
Yeah, no, they were incredible. I mean, Steve Mills, he would call me once a week to check in. Alan would come by the hospital. They'd always send gear and stuff like that. And, especially Allen Houston, man. Allen Houston was one of my heroes growing up. And you never imagine you're going to become, even meet one of your heroes. And Allen has become, a really good friend over the last 15 years. And, just be on the phone with him so much. There was times after games, I'd be on my way home. He'd be on his way home. He would call me and, he would pray on the phone. And one of the on June 18th, the infamous day where they said they were stopping treatment, I was on the phone with Alan and he did a long prayer. And I don't remember 95% of it, but I remember when Alan said I was outside the hospital. I walked out to call Alan, and Alan basically said, God, if when you take her, just make sure it's painless and peaceful. And 2.5 months later it was. And on her birthday, the Knicks sent stuff, and John Starks, Larry Johnson, and Alan made a really nice video. I got a jersey autographed by the whole team that they gave to her, and in my living room I got the framed jersey with her number 1 and Gianna on it. So the organization was always just incredible and so supportive. And when she came to the games for her whole life, they were always amazing. She never paid for any food there. She had VIP treatment. So she's an inspiration to she's my inspiration, and I know she inspired so many Knicks fans and just people around the world. When you have an attitude like that, and she had every right to complain every day, and she didn't. What's for lunch? What's for dinner? Can we go to the mall? Those few months she was able to leave and do stuff. Can we go do something? Why talk about it? Why waste time talking about I might not make it when you're here now and you can just enjoy it.
Anthony, I mean, obviously this season, of course, I guess, especially in the early part of this, been very difficult for you, still dealing with her loss. But, again, there's been some great moments for you. And I know that your sister would be very happy to see that you're happy that the Knicks are playing so well. I guess if you had one wish for this team this season, aside from winning it all, what would that be?
Just play. It's been a rough. This isn't exactly groundbreaking stuff. It's been a rough go for Knicks fans the last 20 years. At this point, give me games that matter at the end of the season. Obviously, I want to make the playoffs. Obviously, I want to go back to the Garden. Obviously, I want to play in the conference finals. But we haven't been in the conference finals in 21 years now. It's been a while. So give me games that matter. Like I'm not talking conference finals right now. If we get there. I'll be there. I'll be root my ass off. Give me games that matter. Give me a reason to say I need to be home to watch the Knicks tonight. Not in past years where obviously as a diehard fan you're going to watch because you love this team. When you're 18-40 or 17-52, and someone invites you to dinner, you're probably going to go to dinner. I can miss a game. Make it so I have to be home to watch every game. And right now, 8 games in, that's what they're doing.
Can you quantify how many wins you think TIBBS makes in terms of impact for this team? Like, again, the hardest part in terms, I think, of predictions and prognosticating where the Knicks would be this year. I think a lot of, even Mark Berman from the Post had the Knicks winning like 30 games. I kind of felt they would be in that same kind of place. I guess I'm hopeful.
The worst thing is, Bobby, you got to make me do math now because my whole life I'm doing 82, with the exception of the lockouts in 99 and 2011. No, 77. What's half of 72?
35, 37. 37.
37. Obviously, there's no math experts on this show.
36. 36.
36.
I think like if you can be around 500, a few games over 500, and like I said, give us games that matter towards the end. Give us a reason. Like I said, we're gonna watch regardless because we love this freaking team. We're gonna watch if we're on an 18-game losing streak. Give us a real reason that we have to watch every night. Give us that. Forget my personal stuff. We've all been through a lot the last year. We love our Knicks. Give us reason to give us a real. We're gonna love our Knicks regardless, but give us reason that we must watch every single night.
Okay. Well, the funny thing is, see how Ann's talking. Ann is being real calm right now, but like talking on the side, he's a maniac. I haven't seen him this excited since the Knicks won 54 games with Melo that year.
I still have nightmares of Roy Hibbert.
That team. Well, I'm even to this day, me, I love me some J.R. Smith because I have a relationship with him, but I still kind of blame him a little bit for what happened.
JR shot 2 for 90 versus the Pacers. Yeah, he gets blamed for that series.
So,
JR was terrible.
Yeah. So, but besides that, I feel like with TIBBS, as long as they, like you're right, as long as they can compete and you see, better play and better development by, Julius Randle, Quigley, RJ Barrett, and the other guys, the Austin Rivers, who honestly now the MVP coming in just first couple of games coming in and what he did last night.
Yeah. Well, last night was like some video game, at the parks. The 4 threes in the last. I mean, you never see that. That was crazy what he did at the end of that game last night.
Yeah. So one of the
that
things
was wild. That was wild, guys.
One of the things that we talked about earlier was the Knicks are playing 5-3, and obviously they have no fans right now. Pretty much the whole league has no fans right now.
Right.
How much do you think? What would their record be right now if there were fans in that arena?
It's so tough to tell because as great as the Garden is when the Knicks are great, I think the Knicks have a little bit of an advantage with no fans, believe it or not, because the away team, and here's why. Because the away team, when they take the court, they don't see Spike Lee. They don't see the models. They don't see the guy that runs KIF. They don't see, Edgar Burgos. They don't see me. You know what I'm saying? They don't see Bobby C like, yo, can I get an interview real quick? So I think that helps the Knicks a little bit. I'm not saying the away team doesn't want to play hard, but I think, because teams, even if the Knicks are horrible, teams come in here and, the eighth man wants to show out because he sees Spike there, or there's Larry David in the front row, Ben Stiller. The list goes on. This doesn't happen in Cleveland or, San Antonio or even Chicago. It doesn't happen. New York and LA. So I think it kind of helps the Knicks a little bit, where I'm not saying you're not going to get efforts from the away team, but you're not going to get that like, yo, I got to have 30 tonight and give my best game. So I think it may help the Knicks a little bit, but the Knicks are playing great basketball. So that said, to answer your question, I still think we're 5-3. I still think we're 5-3, but there could be a little advantage of the Garden not having its ambiance, as great as that ambiance is, if that makes any sense.
All right, and I got a good question for you, since I know you have definite allegiance to Latrell Sprewell. But if you had to take, after this performance by Rivers, especially in the fourth quarter with those 14 points and, like you said, all the threes, give me the greatest number 8 uniform in recent Knicks history. Are you taking Latrell Sprewell, Beasley, J.R. Smith, or Austin Rivers?
I mean, the greatest number 8 performance, I would go with probably, we lost that game. I would say Latrell Sprewell in Game 5 of the '99 Finals, but we lost that game. JR had the greatest before. I'm trying to think of some big games by Spree. I mean, he had 49 versus the Celtics in December of 01, but we lost that game because he missed a free throw. And then Antoine Walker hits a 3 right after and does the shimmy. Are you kidding me? Greatest number 8 performance. Michael Beasley versus Celtics, December 2017 was epic. JR had some big games. It's tough. I don't have an exact performance.
Obviously very early in the season, but I think definitely that Rivers has totally.
Okay, so here's the thing. What Rivers did last night. Rivers did last night, those last 6 minutes, we may never see again. Someone coming down and popping 4 threes to end the game, that's pretty unique. So that actually may be it. Because, Spree's better than Austin Rivers. Maybe J.R. Smith is a better player as well. We may never see a guy ever again just come down and hit 4 threes in a row to end a basketball game. Like that's it. That's it.
It totally segues too, Anthony, because now you got this big marquee matchup coming up between the Knicks and the Nets on Wednesday night.
Oh, it's gonna be huge. It's gonna be huge, man. It's gonna be
at the Garden.
I might have a party of about 3 people in my living room for it.
Cuomo's going to be watching you, my friend.
That's totally within the rules. It's 10. I can have 3 people over. I've been very responsible since March. I can totally have 3 or 4 people over, get some food. That's totally okay.
Good stuff, man. I'm definitely excited to see the outcome of that game, especially, Edgar and I were talking before because the Nets, of course, they win tonight. Big win for them over the Sixers without their star players, knock off a 7-1 team. And now they're back above 500. And the Knicks, of course, above 500. I definitely think I said it at the start of the show. I was kind of making fun, but I think the world is definitely ending. I think it's imminent. This is the end of the world.
Yeah, Knicks we've seen them both be good. Like the 2012-2013 season, they were both very good. In the early 90s for a little bit. The Nets from like 91 to 94 were pretty solid. But then I guess the late 90s, the Nets were good for a year. They made the playoffs with John Calipari. That one season with Sam in 98. They were the 8th seed. But it's very rare they're both good at the same time. I thought there was a nice rivalry in the 2012-2013 season. I definitely thought there was. But it would be cool. I don't like the Nets, but it would be cool to see both teams really matter towards the end of the season. 2004, we played them in the playoffs, got swept. 1994, we beat them in 4 games, 3-1 in that first round series. So it would be cool to see them both be good at the same time. I can't lie. That would be a lot of fun.
I laughed. I saw a meme today that said, the world is going through the United States is going through anarchy, and the Knicks are finally over 500. So
I know, and we can't even get in the building,
which is hilarious.
And were you offended by the fact that the Knicks were mocked in this new Pixar movie, Soul? Because again, ever since the Knicks have been good.
No, because I'll say this. Obviously, I don't have to say this. I love the Knicks. The Knicks are everything to me. But the Knicks, there's been a lot of things that have gone wrong in the last 20 years. So I get it. I'm not losing any sleep because the Knicks got made fun of in a cartoon movie. I think
them.
Yeah, I would think that too. A lot of these players are much younger than me now, so they're probably into it. They're probably like, "Oh, we gotta play good because of this Pixar thing." I'm not really watching this stuff. I just got done watching a new episode of Law & Order SVU, so I'm pumped about that.
And I do want to, last question for me is I want to talk about the Orange and Blue crew. Obviously, you haven't done it. You haven't this season. I know
that would be violating COVID rules now. That would.
Yeah. So
be violating the rules.
Can you tell me the one, how much you miss it, and 2, what's the Orange and Blue game, and why did you start it?
Well, the Orange and Blue crew, I miss it like crazy. I've always been doing events with Knicks fans going back I think the first Knicks fan gathering I did was about 2009 when Al Harrington was getting a bunch of buckets for us. And I always did things at bars. And then one day I was chatting with, Chris Jean, one of our good friends, and we talked about, taking us to the next step, doing events at the Garden. So I started doing events where I was bringing fans to games, and with my connections with the organization, we were able to, incorporate things, giving fans an experience they couldn't get anywhere else, such as going into shoot around, getting a post-game photo on the court, maybe I get Larry Johnson to come over and talk to some fans, take some photos. Allen Houston, guys like that do some real different things. And we started doing things with playing games on the court. I have some celebrity coaches. I've had Spreewell there. I've had J.K.S. Fab, Jerry Ferrara come through. It gives fans experiences they never thought they could ever have. And we expanded where we had an event out in L.A. for a Knicks Clippers game. We had an event for a Knicks Celtics game in Boston. The Celtics and the Clippers organizations were both wonderful to deal with. So I miss it so much, man. And it's going to be tough when it gets back because, back to my sister, G, she was with me for all those events. Everybody's tickets, like she wrote their names. She was there giving people their tickets and being my sidekick. So it's going to be tough when it's back, but I'll definitely be pushing forward. And, I'm not an expert on what's going on in the world. So hopefully in the fall, we're back to normal. We're hugging people, kissing babies, whatever. And hopefully, we're seeing everybody's face again. I know, again, I can't predict it. I hope it's tomorrow, but I know it's not going to be tomorrow. But, hopefully sooner than that. I miss it so much, man, because it's such a camaraderie. The Knicks fan community, man, it's amazing. So I miss it like crazy. And as broke as my heart is, my heart would still be completely broken. But how much better would it be if I had a Knicks game to go to tomorrow? Like, yeah, I'll be at the crib watching tomorrow. Waving my towel at home. Let's go. But, if I was going to the game like I normally would, life would be a tad bit easier. I beg for someone to text me right now. Aunt, could you figure out a way to get me some tickets? Shit, at this point, I get 20 people free tickets. I don't know how, but I'll do it. I just want life back. I'm going crazy.
100%. And before we let you go, I guess this would be a good place. I know our math is all terrible, but let's say the Knicks win 36, 37
the three of us ain't managing nobody's money.
They win 36, 37. They don't make the playoffs. We've already heard your insight about the fact that you do not like the Brooklyn Nets. But let's say, Knicks don't make the playoffs, maybe just miss the playoffs. Nets make the playoffs. As a New Yorker, are you rooting for Brooklyn in the playoffs?
No. Like, I didn't hate, like, the New Jersey Nets if they were in the playoffs. I didn't love them. But no, absolutely not. No. Now, here's the thing. I wouldn't be cheering for the other team. I would not root for them. I'm not like one of these like Met fans that hate the Yankees so much it takes over their bodies. Like I don't like the Nets. I wouldn't root for them, but I'm not gonna if the Nets are playing, the Raptors in the playoffs. I'm not gonna get decked out in a Kyle Lowry jersey. I hope they lose. But
that's fair. We're gonna allow that fans chiming in too here at the bottom.
And you're telling me if the Nets made the finals, you would not root for the Nets?
No. Are you crazy?
Okay, I'm just asking.
The
only team. So the only team out. So I guess like when you. So I gotta say this, and we all work in the sports world now. So when I know a lot of guys, but how many guys are you friends with? Like we all know people. How many? So like. Over the years, the one team I think I would maybe root for if they were is Caron Butler, who I've become very close with the last over the years. He's an assistant with Miami, so I guess I could root for them if they're in the playoffs. So I'm not gonna wear a Heat shirt. I always hate the Heat, but I would never root for the Nets. I would root for the Nets over Boston. I don't think – I hate Boston. I don't know. I couldn't know because the Celtics have won 85 championships. Give them 86 at this point. I couldn't. I'm rooting for the Celtics over the Nets.
I'm going to root for the Nets. I'm putting it out there to make it to the finals.
So I hate the Celtics. So here's the thing. I hate the Celtics more than I hate the Nets, but I can't have the Nets win a championship before the Knicks.
Right.
You feel me?
If LeBron makes it to the finals, I am rooting for him to get his 5th ring. I'm saying it now.
That's fine. That's fine. There's nobody I really hate or anything. I would love to. Yeah, there's nobody I hate. I can't deal. I couldn't deal with the Nets championship. That would be tough. That would be tough.
And I definitely appreciate you taking the time. And again, such an inspiring message this evening, and very excited for you and the Knicks this year. I hope it ends up being as good a year as it looks like it's going to be.
Thank you guys for having me. Shout out to Randy Cruz, the man behind the man behind the scenes, and hopefully be out with you guys again soon, man. Great chat with you all. Thank you.
And you know your brother and I love you.
Love you too, guys. Peace.
Peace out.
Man.
Well, Ed, I guess closing thoughts. We wanted to thank our two guests tonight. Our very first episode of Step in the Arena. Again, a brand new podcast right here on the Cruise Control Podcast Network. And we wanted to thank MikeAScotto of Hoops Hype, USA Today Sports. And, of course, you just heard from Anthony Donahue, 33rd and 7th Podcast, and the Orange and Blue Crew. Closing thoughts, Ed.
Nah, like I said, it's been a privilege. Me and you have dealt with each other for, since the summer ball days. So I'm glad that we're able to reconnect and step into the arena.
Definitely very cool to be here with you tonight. It gave us something to look forward to here during the pandemic. And hopefully, again, for everybody at home, we make some jokes, but we're definitely excited about the prospects of things, being on the up and up, onward and upward here in 2021. And we send out, all the love to all of our first responders and everyone that is dealing with this crisis around the world. And it's not just, of course, COVID-19, it's everything else that we kind of touched upon too, whether it's, these remarkable things that are going on in DC with politics and such, just a lot of strife in the world. And we send our best out to everyone. And we thank you for tuning in tonight for our first episode of Step in the Arena. Yeah,
we appreciate it. And you definitely could, follow us on Twitter, and if you didn't catch the live episode, you could catch us. I'm pretty sure Randy will put it up, and on to next week, and hopefully more special guests.
And I'm gonna get you some Hoops in the Sun gear, or maybe Ball is Life will hook us up with some sweat.
No, bro, I'm gonna say this. If I don't get a Hoops in the Sun sweater this year, major problems. But that's it.
Thanks, man, for joining us tonight. We'll see you next time on the show.
All right, later.